Hello, hello, everybody. As usual, I'll let you stream in. You can say hello in the chat while we let people settle in. The room starts flooding. It's always like, I don't know, it's always a little alarming when people start flooding in, but very cool. All right. As usual, we will have a bit of a presentation by our great nutritionist dietitian Kristen Arnold, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A. So Kristen, while we're letting people in, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more and who you're working with and your history in like the whole sports nutrition field?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I see some familiar faces and names on here. My name is Kristen. I am a registered dietitian. I've been practicing for 8 years. And I also have my sports dietetics credential. I received my Master's of Science in Human Nutrition from the Ohio State University. And my master's thesis was in developing a dietary intervention to lower chronic inflammatory markers in postmenopausal women. And I raced professionally in road cycling for the last 6 years and retired in September of 2021. And now I am the director sportif or coach for professional women's racing Wolfpack presented by Pro Bike Kit. And in addition to that, I also coach cyclists through a company called Source Endurance with a coaching group there. So with my sports nutrition private practice, I specialize in sports nutrition for women, and kind of just gaining momentum with this movement right now and helping women understand what their bodies need and ways to provide that for them. So this topic that we're going to discuss tonight is foundational to understanding like what the body needs nutrient wise and how to meet its demands.
Excellent. Well, I think you can probably, we can probably start. I think that the bulk of people are here and we'll just let people in as they come in, but we've got critical mass, so we can just get started.
Lovely. Okay, I'm gonna pull up the chat box. I didn't have that before. Okay, cool. I like to do my talks what I call open format, where people ask questions throughout, and then I guess Celine is here. That's nice to have a moderator, so Celine can help with those questions. So the presentation is more of just a talk that we're going to do. I don't have any formal materials to share, but I do have materials that I can share after the talk if anyone is interested. But with the topic of meeting the body's energy demands, I'm sure some people have heard the concept of calories in, calories out. So we take calories in through food and any other product or food that has calories in it, and we expend energy through surviving and living. And then also activity, any kind of activity that we do. So there's a lot more to it than just calories in, calories out. And through the research in the last 20, 30 years, we've really discovered that there are a plethora of different ways that metabolically our bodies operate, right? There's so many influencing factors into that equation. So that being said, in my private practice, this is the first thing that I do is calculate calorie needs with my clients, whether we are looking at someone's food record from a nutrient perspective and really dialing in the calories and macros, or I just want to make sure for my own practice that my client is meeting their energy needs and that we don't explicitly talk about the numbers. Either way, it's helpful and important to calculate those for me. in my sports nutrition practice. So as a dietitian, I am trained and abide by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics guidelines. So there is for sure professional experience that I have that I can go beyond that. But generally speaking, I always start with what I learned in school, and then I expand my knowledge beyond that with literature and professional experience working with people. So the first thing we do is use standardized equations to calculate calorie needs. So if you were to go to MyFitnessPal, for example, and like type in what your age, your height, and your weight is, if you want to lose weight, it'll populate what it calculates your calorie needs are. And those are based on two potential standardized equations. There's one called Harris-Benedict, and there's one called Mifflin-St. Jeor. And these take into account your height, your weight, and your age, and that's it. Not your activity level, not your metabolic history, not medication. Like there's nothing else that goes into that number. And then the first number that's calculated is your resting energy expenditure. So if you are in a coma and all you need to do is your organs are working, that's how much energy your body is using. For reference, I did a little bit of calculations before this talk. So a 41-year-old woman that is 5'7" and 140 pounds, these equations would say just resting, not doing anything, would come to 1,350 calories. So once you calculate those numbers, you add in an activity factor, and this is where it gets really interesting for active women, right? And so in my opinion, the activity factors are not super helpful. It's just a scale from 1.2 to 1.9. And do you exercise 1 to 3 times a day lightly? Are you completely sedentary? Do you exercise 3 to 5 times per week at a moderate intensity? Like they're really, really, really general and don't provide too much context, especially to people that are on any kind of exercise schedule where they have defined workouts or activities that they do with their lifestyle. So, and again, for reference, let's say we put in 1.5 for a moderately active person. That would bring us to 2,000 calories for that woman's needs. If they were moderately active, 41 years old, 5'7", 140 pounds. And so the only other thing I want to mention here with the super fun equations is one thing I have most of my clients do, unless they live in really rural areas and it's challenging to find machines to do this, is to measure body composition, which is body fat percentage. It is, so I want to make the distinction here because this is another piece of education that I provide is body composition is your body fat percentage, like the ratio of fat to lean mass. BMI is body mass index, and BMI is just your height to weight ratio. It has nothing to do with how much lean or fat mass you have. So according to the science, the Cunningham equation for calculating calorie needs is more accurate than the standardized equations that just take into account your height, your weight, and your age. And this is where active women, I think, can get lost in standard practice of nutrition and medical practice, is that active women will generally have a lower body fat percentage because they're more metabolically active. And so when you take into account what that weight like is distributed as, fat and lean mass, the equation changes pretty significantly. So if we were to put the same equations in, so as I mentioned, 1,350 calories for the 41-year-old, 5'7", 140-pound woman, and I calculate 25% body fat for that person, now their resting energy expenditure is 1,550 calories. So that's a 200-calorie increase. And then if I put in the same activity factor, it comes to 2,325 calories. So that is a 200-calorie difference for resting energy expenditure and almost a 350-calorie difference for an activity energy expenditure. So if you think about it, if someone is eating even 300 calories under their needs every day, that adds up to like what, over 2,000 calories in a week. That's almost a day of calories that they're missing out over the course of a week. So if and when you are going to use apps, or you're even going to a practitioner that is calculating your calorie needs, like I think it would be really helpful for you to ask how those numbers were calculated, because there is a lot of room for error, really, in what it is. So that goes into kind of like a description of how standard practice works with how calories are calculated. And that is like assuming this person or a person doesn't have any kind of like history of what would be called low energy availability, or whether they were doing it intentionally or unintentionally, intentionally for weight loss, or unintentionally they just had a low appetite. And those are all things to consider. So that's the first part of the presentation I wanted to give today. And then I wanted to speak to if anyone had specific questions for me beyond that. I know there was one question asked earlier about this person did have low energy availability, and clearly they had been doing everything that was in the Women Are Not Small Men, the Roar book, right? Like all the boxes were checked in the description of how do you come back from low energy availability. In one other piece of context there, when we're talking about when the energy availability is not being met, so the body needs this amount of calories and it's not getting it, what happens to the body when you do that is that the body adapts by needing less calories. So let's say your needs are 2,000 calories to maintain your weight and meet your body's energy needs. If you start eating 1,500 calories, after a while, your body will adapt and then not need as many calories in order to sustain normal function. And so people that get trapped in the circle of yo-yo dieting, where they're going really low energy availability, and then they go up, and they go really low, and they go up, and they go really low. Every time that they go lower, they're lowering their resting energy expenditure, the amount of calories that their body needs to survive. So when you go back to trying to eat a normal, or what would be considered like a standard amount of calories that your body would need, that number is no longer relevant because their resting energy expenditure is not in line with the standard guidelines. So to put it more simply, like 140-pound, 41-year-old, 5'7" woman, if they need 2,000 calories, and let's say they've never yo-yo dieted, like they've never gotten dipped into low energy availability in their life, like they're always pretty consistent. Their body probably needs just the 2,000 calories per day. But let's say they, at some point they did keto, at some point they did Atkins, at some point they did any other number of diets. Now all of a sudden, at 41 years old, 5'7", 140 pounds, their body only needs 1,700 calories to maintain the same function. And then the therapy and the process of coming out of that is where the art and the practice of nutrition and dietetics comes in.
What is the ramifications on exercise performance with that? Because what I'm hearing, I'm not making the next connecting the dots. Like, it doesn't sound like, okay, so I need less. Is that a bad thing? Like it's not, I'm missing a piece there. That it seems like low energy availability seems like it's problematic. And if it's resetting you that you just don't need as many calories, like what, I'm missing a piece when it comes to women who are active in performing.
Yeah, so one challenge that I run into is when you have less calories that you're eating, you have less opportunities to get quality vitamins and minerals and nutrients that your body needs. Like trying to cram all of the carbs, fat, and protein and all of the A, B, C, D, E, K vitamins that your body needs and all the minerals into 1,700 calories, it's much more difficult than if you have 2,000 calories to work with. So when the body needs less calories, you're also putting your body at risk for deficiencies of other nutrients, of other micronutrients, nutrients that don't have calories in them. So that's one of the challenges. Another challenge is that generally speaking, like the body doesn't want to be in this state where it just needs less calories. It functions better when the body is more metabolically active, meaning that the tissue that you have, such as lean mass, muscle mass, uses a higher amount of calories in order to sustain function. And so as a performance, when you're speaking about performance, not needing as many calories will over time affect your ability to perform because you can't hit those like high-end efforts the same.
Can it be reversed?
Yes.
Do you want to speak to that? There's a question, I don't want to miss it, is when you talked about body composition, so many people have the DEXA scales, the Garmin scales, all this. Are they at all, is there anything in a pinch, are they accurate at least within yourself? Are they useful within yourself?
They are precise. So I don't think you'll be able to see that. So yeah. Accurate means that the true number in a perfect measurement tool, whatever number your measurement tool is measuring is like close to that exact accurate number. Precise just means that it's close to itself.
Yes.
So right. Yes. Yeah, you said accurate to itself. Yes, that's correct. It's just precise. So I go back and forth about this, and I will say for sure that the technology has gotten a lot better in like the last 5 years. Like the at-home scales are so much better than they used to be. Like $120 scale 5 years ago would be up to 8 to 10% inaccurate. Like it would be like plus or minus 8 to 10%, which is like effectively worthless. Now it's much closer to like 4 to 6%, which is still not great, but it's not bad. So those tools can be helpful if you do end up using like an at-home body composition scale, like one that measures body fat percentage. I always recommend that you, every time you weigh yourself, like you go to weigh yourself or use the scale, you take 3 measurements. So if you are doing a science experiment in a lab for a study and you're weighing like anything, you always take 3 measurements. You put the item on the scale, you take it off, you zero it out, put it on the scale, take it off, zero it out. Do it that 3 times and take the average of those 3 values. And then you can know how it may or may not be consistent, right? Because some of those scales, when I used them like 5 years ago, they would be up to 6% different, like 1 second to the next second. So it's just not helpful.
Gotcha. Okay, so I think we can go back to our pressing question about getting out of low energy availability once somebody has dipped into that territory.
Yep. So the first thing, so low energy availability causes lots of different metabolic changes in the body. Some of the main ones that you may be familiar with include like raised cortisol levels, which affects all kinds of different endocrine system functions. And so it's a combination of meeting the body's energy needs with lowering the overall stress on the body. So in my professional experience, you can't really do one without the other. Like if you increase your calories to meet your body's energy needs, but you're not also like getting high quality sleep, if you have any kind of life stress, trying to manage that as much as possible, doing things that make you happy, eating high quality food, like it really is a 10-pronged approach to low energy, to getting out of low energy availability. In standard practice, it also depends on how severe it is. So as a minimal, some people, if it's like a short term, like only like 1 to 3 months of time that you are in low energy availability, some practitioners will just increase by like 300 calories over the calculated amounts that I mentioned earlier. If the athlete is in like a severe low energy availability for more than 6 months, it can be as much as 1,000 calories above the estimated calorie needs of that person based on their age, height, weight, body composition, activity level.
So is that, I imagine you're doing all of this, like say you have somebody who has been an ultra runner, or they've been in the state, are you dialing back their activity while also marginally increasing their energy intake? Like what does that look like in practical application?
Yeah, that's a good question. The activity modulation is out of my scope of practice. So if I identified an athlete I was working with that had low energy availability and they had other factors such as like losing their menstrual cycle, they had abnormal blood work coming back, like there are like medical indicators that there's something really wrong, then I would have them consult with a physician or another medical professional that they're comfortable working with, and then we would work together and they would take care of the activity modulation. But yes, it is a matter of, I mean, in any case, you have to lower usually the volume, the
Right,
intensity as
right.
well, but it's usually the volume is the first thing that's cut.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's in line with pretty much everybody I've talked to.
Yep.
How does one stay out of low energy availability?
Eat enough. Uh,
Boy, I've said that many times.
I
And
actually
yeah,
do
go ahead.
find that tracking every once in a while is helpful. Not that you need to track what and how much you're eating every day or even every week, but just doing like a check-in like once a month. Most people I work with eat less than they think they do. Um, and one of the most common occurrences I see in the clients that I work with is that they will graze lightly throughout the day and then they'll eat like a ton for dinner in the evening. And so they feel like they're eating a lot, but they are eating more than normal for one meal, but they're missing out on so many opportunities to eat earlier in the day. And so by seeing it physically, like seeing a record and seeing how everything actually lines up can be a really good self-monitoring technique that's what it's called, self-monitoring. So that's one strategy, but it really depends on the person because some people, they just like their appetite is their main barrier to getting enough. Like they're just not, like their body isn't sending them the hunger cues that they need to get what they need. So, and that's where the practice of dietetics really comes in, is finding creative ways to make sure that the athlete is getting those calories. And some of the most common ones would be like incorporating liquid calories in the form of smoothies. So smoothies, for example, are essentially pre-digested, right? Like you're blending it up the same as you would blend it up in your mouth. So you can really cram a lot of calories in a liquid form, and that can be a really like quick and easy and meeting kind of the lifestyle needs of people that I work with. Like a lot of people that are active are also in an activity, are also active in lots of other areas of their lives. So having things that are easy and quick and portable can be helpful.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. And you and I talked a bit before we let everyone in that I've seen some literature that just trying to plan more nutrition around your actual workout. Like if you know you're doing a run at lunch or a two, whatever it is, just making sure that you fuel, fuel around that. I mean, what are your thoughts there?
Totally. There's a lot of ways to think about um, how to make food choices, right? Every person has their own style for eating. And some people, their emphasis is on taste and quality, and they're not going to necessarily eat something if it doesn't taste good and has good quality. Other people are really focused on convenience, and like they're not going to eat something if it takes a long time to make. But the essence of people that are active and are focused on optimizing their performance, their emphasis ideally is on how can food help them perform in their activity. And so in that way, like when the athlete is like thinking about their day of food, it should always, like, the emphasis should be on the activity and how are they going to get what they need before, during, and after their activity. And then other things are outside of that.
Yeah, that's great. I am sure that there's got to be some questions.